Good evening and welcome to Momentum Chat. I am Majida Bay, your financial conductor, and I help parents and professionals get on the right financial track for success. And tonight we're actually going to be talking about boundaries, right? Do you suffer from severe difficulty in taking ownership of your life? Hey, if that's a question that makes you think a little bit, you want to stay tuned to this conversation. So we'll be talking to you in a few. Good evening, John. Good evening. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Hey, hey, young lady.
Hello.
What are you doing?
I am about to call my grandma.
Okay. Good to see you.
You too.
She was reminding me to tell you about the conversation we had in the car.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Tell him now.
Okay, I will. I will. All right. So let's talk to the audience first. Good evening, John.
Good evening,
Welcome. Glad to have you again. For those that don't know, this is John Efting, senior financial broker. Been in the industry for over 20 years or closing in on 20 years now. And he's in the business of leadership development, right? But along with that, he's a husband, he's a father, definitely a man of God, and, a gentleman that I've had the honor and pleasure to be able to work with, be mentored by. So I certainly appreciate him taking the time out every week to join us for these conversations. And I know we're in finance, right? Like that's our industry. And we've kind of gone off topic the last few weeks, but I definitely think these are conversations. They're interrelated, right? It deals with your finances. Your finances, if you don't get these things straight, right? We talked last week about needs. This week we're going to be talking about boundaries. And I got the question down there, right? Do you suffer from severe difficulty in taking ownership of your life? And I actually got that question, John, from this book that I'm reading or listening to on audio book called Boundaries: When to Say Yes, When to Say No, Take Control of Your Life. It's written by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. So we've talked about it before, right? The books you read, right, can change your life. And I've just been reading this over the last day or so, or listening to it over the last day or so, and I feel like liberated, right? And just through the first chapter. But it's interesting though, right? Like boundaries. We were talking about needs last week, and you share with us the different types of needs that people have: certainty, uncertainty, significance, connection and love, contribution, and I'm missing one, I know. But
See, we said contribution, significance, right? Love and connection. Geez. A lot of times I have this stuff off the top of my head, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
It's
sure
all
we're
good.
missing one.
We got most of them. We have most of them. So if you missed it, go back and watch last week's show, and you learn what we shared about certain, the different needs that people have. And I don't recall how we got on the topic of boundaries, but we said we were going to talk about boundaries this week. And I wanted to bring some insight from this book that I had. It's been on my playlist for a while. Like somebody had recommended it to me. I think almost a year ago now, and I'm just getting around to like listening to the audiobook. And man, it has been life changing, right? Just in the last few days. And so, can you share with us, John? Right, real quick. Well, let me share this message from the book, and then I'll let you go ahead and on this. It said, "Made in the image of God, we were created to take responsibility for certain tasks. Part of taking responsibility or ownership is knowing what is our job and what isn't." So let me ask you this question first, John. Why is it difficult for us to know what is our job and what isn't, whether it's in our personal lives or even in our careers? Why is that so difficult for some people?
Well, sometimes it's because we haven't figured out what we're called to do. We haven't figured out who we are. So sometimes we're mimicking other people and trying to mimic their lives. So then we take on more. So you and I have these roles that we're supposed to have, right? But then another part of it is there's a part of us that take on other people's roles too when we weren't called to do that. I believe God only designed me to do a few things very, 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 very well at a time, right? So if I spread myself too thin, everything gets a mediocre result or mediocre effort, if you will. So, and then we have another issue, right? We're always trying to please somebody else, concerned about what other people think. We put way too much pressure on ourselves, and I think it really, really boils down to the fact that we don't know what our calling is. We don't know why we were created. And once you figure that out and you buy into it, setting boundaries actually becomes pretty easy. Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. Because I know, for myself, I shared this maybe last week that I have a tendency, right, to say yes. Right, somebody asks me something, I say yes. And
Yes,
I
you
was
do.
sharing with my mastermind group on Sunday that it's not my preference, right? Like I prefer, like in my mind, to say no. But my tendency, right, my habit has been to say yes because it's like I'm very task oriented, right? Like what needs to get done. So if somebody asks me to do something, I'm like, I can do it, right? So I feel not so much obligated to do it, but I feel like why not, right? Like why can't if I can make the time, but then you can oftentimes tend to put too much on your plate,
Absolutely.
and so setting boundaries, right? This is something else from the book. It says setting boundaries inevitably involves taking responsibility for your choices. You're the one who makes them. You're the one who must live with their consequences. And I want to share that because for oftentimes we're taking on other people's responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
and he uses this analogy in the book where he talks about boulders versus our daily load, right? So they're just things
Okay.
on a daily basis, right, that we have to do, right? Gotta brush our teeth, stay, keep our body clean, eat, all of those things. And so the problem arises when individuals actually see their daily loads as
Mm.
boulders, and they see, and so those people want to shirk responsibility, if you will. And then you have others who see their boulders as daily loads, right? So they have a tendency to take on too much, right? Like, oh, I can just add it on top of what I'm already doing,
Yeah.
right? And so what is it like within the person, right? You spoke to, I guess, the idea that people don't know what their calling is, they don't know who they are,
Mm-hmm.
and so they just take on a lot of different things. But for those who shirk responsibility or who try to put things off on other people, where do you think that mindset comes from?
The fear of failure.
Mm.
The fear of failure. Procrastination can be traced back to the fear of failure. Why do we put off stuff? Because we fear failing it. We fear screwing it up. Shirking responsibility is really just the fear of failure. I mean, I don't even know how to express that any differently. and then our world has taught us, our school systems and so forth have taught us that making a mistake is bad, when that's not really true. Making mistakes is actually pretty good. Now you should make mistakes you could have avoided, right? If you had listened to sound wisdom and got good counsel and things like that, right? And if you could have not made those mistakes, that's even better, right? But making a new mistake because you endeavored out into something new, yeah. So some people freeze, right? We're all blessed with these gifts, right? Scripture talks about the master and he gives us gifts based on our ability to handle them, right? And normally the ones who don't do anything with their gifts is the reason is because out of fear. Fear of what? Fear of failure. Fear of losing it,
Yeah.
right? And so yeah, those people, those are the people who normally end up in your boundaries, right? They end up in your yard because they don't want to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
And
sad to say. It's
so
funny.
let's relate that to what we do in our industry, right? When it comes to our finances, right? setting boundaries with our finances. So, can you speak to that a little bit? What does it look like being able to set boundaries with your finance?
Parents have a big issue with this. So I grew up in the hood, and we weren't a wealthy family growing up. My parents did the best they could, and I'm ecstatic with the result. But what I noticed today in 2021, and I've noticed it for probably 30, 35 years, is that a lot of parents hide what's really going on in their families financially, right? To kind of not put the pressure on the children, if you will, right? So what they do, and I'm talking about 2-parent household, they'll buy the children stuff that they really can't afford. They take them on vacations and stuff because they just want to give their child what they didn't have.
Yeah.
Right. Or better than they had, right? Even though they can't afford it, right? They haven't planned for it. They haven't done all the things that you need to do to make sure you can do those types of things, right? And I think you're setting your child up for failure, right? Because if you're having financial issues, I think what you should be doing is teaching them how to fix it, how to help them, what if it happens to them? Now they have no reference of how to fix it.
Right.
Right. And that's a boundary issue, right? You take your child to McDonald's 3 times a week simply because that's a boundary issue. You buy them stuff that they don't really need with money you don't have to impress their friends. That's a boundary issue. And sometimes those very boundaries are broken trying to impress other family.
Yep.
When really we should be a unit. We should be talking about this stuff together. We should be trying to raise each other up together. And look, I'm preaching. Hey, listen to me. Even my family don't do this that well, right? It's a lot of stuff we should talk about, but we just don't. Right?
Yeah.
We're spread out all over the world. I can't even say over the country no more. Right? Now we're all over the world because I'm the oldest of 9. But it's certain, and then here's the thing. And when it comes to finances, people act like it's a taboo topic. Like you don't want nobody to know how much you make or no, they can't spend it. What do you care, right? But that's another issue. The reason people don't want to talk about that stuff is because they haven't set that they don't understand their calling, so they haven't set the appropriate boundaries to say no. I noticed once I figured out what my calling was, what I was put here on earth to do, I automatically ended up with an honorary degree in no. I got a doctorate in no. I don't mind saying no. It's almost like a trigger word now. You can start asking me something, and my brain automatically goes to no. And then I got to finish hearing what you said, and I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. Oh yeah, I can make that. Right?
There are 2 words.
Automatically goes to no because I've said this numerous times, right? Even on this talk. The only people I qualify people to be in my life. I know it sounds harsh, but I qualify people. The only people that belong in my life are somewhere between my present and my goal. So I understand certain people. Hey, it's certain people who've outgrown me. I've outgrown a lot of people. Our values just didn't line up.
Yep.
Boom, I'm out, man. I mean, and no hard feelings either. Still pray for them. My wife will tell. We was having this conversation today. I still pray for these people. Right? They're like on the list. Wait a minute. It was up here. Matter of fact, I could have showed you the list. I literally got a list of people I still pray for, right? Some of them don't even like me. Because of, I just... And it's so funny because I have boundaries. My phone doesn't ring and I just automatically pick up for everybody. Some people don't like that. There's some people who actually believe that because they called, I should have answered. And this is how you know those type of people. As soon as you end up actually talking to them or getting a text from them, I tried to call you, but you didn't answer. If that's the first thing come out of your mouth, you thought you were more important than whatever else I was doing. I'm not him. My family, my wife and children, my daughter could tell you. Listen, my mother could tell you. I have a thing in me that says your emergency will never become my emergency.
Mm.
Just how it is. You know why? I know my calling. So I'm not going to be in my prayer room. Sorry, that's my prayer room. I'm not going to be in my prayer room and you call and I answer. Not you, but people, right? Actually, you I probably pick up, right? But people, it's just not it. Matter of fact, I'm a businessman too. I want you to think about this. Let's say you had a doctor. I'm a financial doctor, right? What if you had a doctor and every time you called him, he picked up the phone. She picked up the phone. Mine's a female, right? She picked up the phone. I would be concerned. She got no other patients. She ain't got nothing else to do. I'm finding a new PCP tomorrow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I have a very good friend of mine who's a chiropractor, right? But I wouldn't expect him to be answering his phone every time I call. I expect it to go to voicemail. The arrogant person thinks you're supposed to pick up for them. Yeah. Right? And you deal with me, you're going to find out very fast. Your emergency will never become my emergency. Besides, even my mom. I love my mom. My mom is like the real superwoman. She's like the real Wonder Woman. My mom's in Nebraska, though. So even if she had an emergency, what the heck can I do? I'm in Virginia Beach. So what would be the emergency that I can actually do? I can actually pull the trigger on. And I've thought about this. I'm like, what could I do, right? When my daughter got sick, all right, some years back, there's only so much I can do. But I set them boundaries a long time ago. And it's hard to do, especially when you care about people.
Yeah.
So I try to be there for guys. Like I get to go have lunch with some really good guys and we're part of Bible study groups and we're studying a book together and I try to be there for them. But I still got boundaries. I'm still a husband and father first. Husband first, father second. Some of y'all will get that on your way home, but it's just some people put way too much emphasis on certain things, and I really understand now it's because of they don't know their calling. One last thing. As a father, I'm gonna say this. I understand that one day my daughter's leaving. Matter of fact, if it works out right, the way God has called it to be, right? She's my princess, and one day she'll be somebody else's queen. I can't put her too high up on the priority list. She's gonna be somebody else's queen.
Yeah.
I don't even like saying that. In my mind, ain't nobody gonna take care of her like me. Right? Nobody gonna love her like me, right? But the facts are, yes, somebody is gonna love her like me, and probably even better, but differently. And I gotta be okay with that. But I understand my call.
That's good stuff. So I'm glad you mentioned, the idea that when it comes to parents and buying stuff for their children. So I have this conversation with my daughter all the time, right? She asked me for something, right? She wants extensions. I'm like, why you want extensions, right? You want it because you see somebody else with them, right? Colored extensions, all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so she wants candy or cookies or she wants something that I'm like, look, what did she ask me today? She asked me if she could have what was it? I don't know, something. And I was just like, belly shirts, right? This is why, social media. And so my response to her was like, when you can afford to buy them, right? So like I'm not just gonna buy you stuff because other people have it. I'm not gonna just buy you stuff because that's what you want. I've even bought books about it. There's a book we have called Needs versus Wants, right? It's a children's book, and I had her read it, so those things, But it was interesting. We were supposed to do this in the beginning. The conversation that we had on the way home from the grocery store was about children. I jokingly said to her, "I'm gonna beat her." And I don't remember what we were talking about. I'm like, "I'm gonna beat you." Right? She was like, "Are you really?" I'm like, "No." Right? Like I said it jokingly, but she was just like, "Why do parents beat their children?" Right? Like it was just I was just like, that's a good question. Because I'm like, I can't muster up the energy, like how much energy that would take to go beat a child, right? And her response was, they must have some anger, right, inside of them that they're like trying to get out. I was just like, whoa.
Wow.
That blew me away. I was like, you know what? You're probably right? They've got some frustration, there's some anger. But even in the book on boundaries, he talks about the parent-child relationship and how oftentimes it's difficult because parents are accustomed to their children being in having a certain role. And as their children get older, it's important for them to separate themselves, have some spiritual boundaries, some emotional boundaries away from their parents in order to establish new norms, if you will, between the boundaries that they have. Otherwise, you're always going to be perceived in this role as a child. And that's one of the things that I'm very conscious about with my children. It's like, you're not going to be a child forever. One. Two, I'm not going to always be here. So I'm like always
Yeah.
preparing them to be able to take care of themselves, right? I
Mhm.
try to set those boundaries earlier. I'm not going to do things for you that you can do for yourself. Occasionally,
That's
yes, I
awesome.
don't mind calling you a little bit, but you can get up and put your own clothes on. You can pick out your outfit, right? I ain't that particular on what you wear, as long as it's clean and it's neat, right? But boundaries like that, like you mentioned earlier, parents oftentimes want to give their children what they didn't have. And I think it's important to share, right? Like my daughter, she was just like, "Mommy, are you going to make $2,000 today?" And I was just like, right, because we had this challenge last year where I had to make $2,000 a week, or I would have consequences. Right, outside of my job, I was supposed to earn two thousand
Right.
dollars a week, so there would be consequences. But he speaks about that as well in the book, that behaviors have consequences.
Consequences.
And a common boundary problem is disowning our choices and trying to lay the responsibility of them on someone else.
Oh my gosh.
Man, I'm telling you, look, for those that are listening, we're talking about the book Boundaries, When to Say Yes, When to Say No, to Take Control of Your Life by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. And so
No, you got to put
it's
that back on the screen. No way.
the book,
I got
the
that
book or
was
the
beautiful. Put that
the
last
book.
question up there or that last
Oh,
statement,
okay. Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Behaviors have consequences.
Consequences. Right.
A common boundary problem is disowning our choices and trying to lay the responsibility of them on someone else. I've said for years, right? If you don't take responsibility for your life, if you don't take ownership, first rule of leadership, everything's your fault. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't take ownership of it, you are now a slave to whoever it is you trying to lay that
Yeah.
blame on. And some people have not liked me saying this. I've said this at conferences and different leadership things and marriage things, and right. And somebody always, no, it was my ex-husband. You married him. It was my ex-wife. You chose her.
Right.
My baby
Yep.
mama. You laid down with her. I mean, if we read if we reverse, right, and look back, you made a decision. And here's the
Yep.
funny thing. I'm speaking to my spiritual people now. It's a lot of people, especially in my circle, who think God is in control. God is in control. God is in control. That's actually really stupid. Let me tell you why. God is not in control of our decisions,
Mm-hmm.
but he do predestine the consequences of our decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Predestined. So in other
Mm-hmm.
words, he said, here's Majida. If she makes this choice, this is what's going to happen. These are the things that's
Yeah.
going to happen. If she
Yep.
goes this way, but God gave us all free will.
Yeah.
Think about that. He created us so we would love him. And he didn't even put in place a mechanism to make us love him. He even wanted that to be free.
Right. So in the book, he speaks about that, right? Like that, just like God sets boundaries, right? Like that's a boundary, right? You my child, but you have free will, right?
Yes. And here's the cool
Right.
thing. God even holds himself to his boundaries. He's God. He can
Yeah.
do whatever the heck he wants to do. Yet he says, nope, I can't do that either. Sorry. Can't. No.
Yep.
Wow. That is.
Yeah.
I got to read this book.
Yeah, I'm telling you, this is the first chapter, John. Right? Like I didn't even get out the first chapter, and I literally have like a whole my notes. Right, is like probably 3 pages long. You know, from I transcribe the book when I read stuff because it's just like, oh, that's good. Oh, I need to remember that, right? Because I want to be able to call it to remembrance.
Right.
And it was just phenomenal how he like laid those things out. But if you think about it in that terms, right? If God sets boundaries, and as he said earlier, we made in his image, makes sense that we should set boundaries, right? But what he speaks about here, disowning our choices, right? So for those of us who have had, right, I'm not gonna claim that I do that anymore, right? Who have had challenges with setting boundaries.
Beautiful.
It's been because we take ownership of other people's choices, right? Somebody made a decision, they don't know how to get out of the situation or they need help. And so we take ownership of it, right? The opposite is those who disown their choices, right? Who say, "Oh, it's not my fault," right? Like you were speaking about earlier. So I think it goes hand in hand. But when you take like, I'm a person that just takes ownership, right? If I made a mistake, if I missed something, if I'll take the L, because I'll own it.
Yeah.
To
see,
be
my
able
L
to.
isn't a loss; it's a lesson.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'll take the L. I'll take the L. I'm cool with the L. Right. And you're talking about people not taking the responsibility, right? I learned that whenever I didn't take responsibility, right, and blame somebody else, now I'm waiting for them to change.
Yep.
Now I'm waiting for them to do something to make me feel good, to whatever the case may be, and that day may never come. So a very wise young man taught me years ago. He said, "John, when you're wrong, admit it quickly.
Yeah.
And when you're right, shut up." Just shut up. Now, some people would think that would be hard. No, some people, that's hard. First of all, that's hard. Okay. But it's not hard the way you may think. Most people think it's hard to admit when you're wrong. That's actually the easy one. The hard one is shutting up when you know you're right. You know how we are. When we right, we got to prove everybody we're right. Y'all need to know I was right. And let me tell you, my marriage got a lot more peaceful when I got there. When you're wrong, admit it. When you're right, shut up. They'll figure it out. And sure enough, it comes together. Things will happen.
Yeah. That's so true. She just asked me, "Did you tell him?" Yeah, I told him the story.
He told me.
She was like, "Why would you beat them if you love them?" Right? Like just like it just didn't make sense to her.
Well, I can answer that question, right? It was a form of in the old, it was a form of discipline, right? And the Bible even talks about spare the rod, spoil the child. If you don't discipline them, right? The rod in the scriptures is talking about spanking, right? But spare the rod, spoil the child, which means you don't really love them. Even God disciplines us, right? So if you don't really love them if you don't. But people took it a little too far. So there's a part of me who agrees with little mama, because she was like, hey, maybe they got some anger issues, maybe they got some unresolved stuff, or it's just a taught thing. This is what is done to them, and they just, that's all they think to do. And I'll be honest, my daughter was, so I have an older who's 27. She'll be 27 in March. And now we have Jesse. Jesse just turned 16. But it wasn't until later in my life that I realized that was not needed at all, really, if you're articulate enough. And I think that's where the issue comes. If you're not articulate enough, like my godson, Never had to raise my hand to him. I mean, he can get out of pocket, but I've never had to. I can have a conversation with him, right? And
So,
I'm very intentional. I come down to their level, wherever that is. I don't talk at them. I talk to them. We talk about standards, right? I was having
yeah.
a conversation with a young fellow who's friends of my wife and I. He's Persian. He had us over for dinner, and we just had a great conversation. I love hanging out with this guy. But he had my wife and I over for dinner, and we were talking about boundaries, like what we were talking about. Excuse me, standards. How do you know if something's wrong or right? What's the standard?
Yeah.
That's a question. I let the whole audience play it out in their head, because some people say they don't believe in God. Okay, so what's your standard then? So which you told me is murder's not wrong. Yes, it's wrong. Says who? What's your standard?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a baseline, you don't know
Yeah.
what's bad. You don't know what's good. You got to have a base first,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's one of the conversations we were talking about. Well, when it comes to rearing children, like your daughter talked about, why would you beat them, right? Some people don't have a base. They don't know. So sometimes they're just mimicking what they saw or what happened to them,
Yeah.
right? And
And
I'm not
I'm
going to go any further because, there's no statute of limitations on that stuff. So I'm not going to incriminate nobody.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you mentioned that, John, because this was another part. This is still in the first chapter. He said,
Wow.
our minds and thoughts are important reflections of the image of God. Establishing boundaries in thinking involves three things. One, own our own thoughts. Many people have not taken ownership of their own thinking processes. They are mechanically thinking the thoughts of others without examining them. Right? That's one right reason.
Oh
Two,
my
we
God.
must grow in knowledge and expand our minds. We are to use our brains to have better lives and to glorify God. We need to grow in knowledge of God and His Word. And three, we must clarify distorted thinking. We all have a tendency to not see things clearly, to think and perceive in distorted ways. So, that first reason that he mentioned three things in establishing boundaries in our thinking, right? So we've spoken about that before. Starts with thoughts, thoughts lead to feelings lead to actions lead to results, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't challenge our thinking, which you've I know mentioned before, if we don't challenge our thinking, we're accepting or we're taking on what we experience. We're mimicking, like you said, what was done to us, and we're not examining it. And the book that helped me with that was The Four Agreements, right? That book
Oh, wow.
freed me in a lot of ways, and that helped me to, like, even when it comes to our faith, right? I didn't choose my faith. My parents chose it, and
Well,
I chose to accept it, right? And later on in life, when I examined it, I was like, well, hey, this it works for me, right? It makes
okay.
sense to me. I understand the principles or tenets of that faith. But most people, they're mimicking. I like how you said that they're mechanically
Mechanically.
thinking the thoughts of others without examining them, right?
Wow.
We just regurgitate what we've heard over time, right? Because repetition is the mother of learning. So you think you know something because that's what you've heard your whole life, but you've never examined whether what you're saying is true for you, all right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's another way when it comes to setting boundaries is to challenge your own thinking or challenge the
Yep.
thinking that you've accepted. So I
Yep.
thought that was
It's
pretty
profound that I also had that issue. Um, I think I was lucky that I started being detoxed from these types of things you're talking about long time ago. And I
yeah.
think it was the change in career. I also think it was the change of environment and the people I was hanging around. And then
Hmm.
also feeding myself, books and things I was listening to and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
a lot of times in our society today, especially in our society today, people aren't learning at all because they only gravitate towards things they agree with. So
Mm.
if you don't agree with them, they won't listen to you, right? It's almost like they throw the baby out with the bathwater. They cannot agree with you in one area, and everything about you is gone, right? It's,
Mm.
our society calls it the council culture, right? And it's kind of crazy, right? And I've told people for years that's one of the reasons my wife and I years ago thought to homeschool our daughter. because I didn't want to teach her what to think. I wanted to teach her how to think.
Yeah.
And it worked beautifully. Right? Some people would think because she was homeschooled, she thinks just like us. Like no, because we were also very diligent and careful into not getting her to think like us. We wanted her to
Yeah.
think on her own, let her come up with her own stuff, right? And so the conversations we have with her are just profound. Like it's cool when she just comes downstairs, knocks on our bedroom door, comes in and just starts rattling and starts talking and has some questions, and my wife and I are like, oh my God, she is so right. But you know what that also does for me? I noticed that as she had a birthday little get together recently, and one of my friends who was in town that particular day, I think I told this story, that particular day, he was there and he looked around at all the children. It was only 7 children. 7? Something like that. 7, 10, something like that. But he looked at all of her friends, the 7 that got invited, and he said, your daughter has a different style and movement than all of them. I can't tell you how good that felt. Right? Because I don't want her to be in a box. Right? What scares me about her going to college is she'll be indoctrinated instead of being taught. Now, thank God, already that stuff is happening. Right? But even she catches it quickly. She's like, no, and so she'll tell us about it. We're like, wow. Like, okay. Right? But the way she dresses, the way she moves, the way she puts her makeup on, the way she don't care what you think, including me and my wife. She does not care what her mother and I think. She don't care. This is her style. So this is what she does. I love that. Right? Now, of course, as a husband, as a father, I have to set some boundaries.
Yeah.
Hence our talk today, right? But she even understands those boundaries are for her safety, not to, right? And what I want to say to our audience, but especially before we get off of here, is when you figure out your calling, and then you're able to start setting boundaries, and you can start setting boundaries long before you figure out what your calling is. It's liberating. There's a weight that leaves you. You don't have to be a poser anymore. You don't have to try to be someone you're not. You can be authentically you. Now, you need to work on your authentic self, right? And be better. Because I promise you, once you figure out who your authentic self is, it's flawed too. But now you can work on it. And you can work on it without any reservations. Because you have boundaries now.
That's good.
Yeah.
I want to end this message from the book. He said, the basic law of sowing and reaping is what successful people depend on for surviving and a future. The problem comes when someone interrupts the law of sowing and reaping in another's life. Right. So like, just for me, just keeping things simple. When I read that, I'm like, all right, did I sow it? The answer is no. Then I shouldn't have to reap the consequences of
That's
it.
right.
All right. And it's not that you don't help people, right? It's not that you don't serve people. And the book is biblically based. And so he had this list of questions, right? It's quite a few that, let me pull it up here. He says that confusion of responsibility and ownership in our lives is a problem of boundaries. We need to set mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional boundaries for our lives. But oftentimes people question, right? Can I set limits and still be a loving person? What are legitimate boundaries? What if someone is upset or hurt by my boundaries? How do I answer someone who wants my time, love, energy, or money? Why do I feel guilty or afraid when I consider setting boundaries? How do boundaries relate to submission? Aren't boundaries selfish, right? So these are some of the questions that I'm sure people have like thought about or have come across. And so it's you're not the only one, right? If you're out there and you're listening, you're not the only person who may have had challenges. And it doesn't have to be, right? There's different types of boundaries. Maybe you have no problem saying no to people, but like me, you have a problem saying no to responsibility, right? Or task, right? Somebody wants to,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Functional responsibilities versus relational responsibilities. Um, so it's important to, like John said, know yourself, get to understand what your purpose, what your calling is, so that it's easier to answer those questions, right? But we said here before, the quality of your life is determined by the
The quality.
quality of the questions you ask yourself and the quality of the questions you ask others. And
Mhm.
so the conversation that we had tonight about boundaries, right? We wanted to give you some questions to think about, some things to consider. And as you're moving forward in 2021, as you're setting goals for yourself and for your life, being clear about what you're calling, right? I'm spending some time right now and actually doing a self assessment. I think I mentioned this last week. And it's been, eye opening, just getting clear and being able to listen to my own voice, knowing my preferences, right? Because I often just lean to whomever I'm right. If it's my parents, right, or the children want something, right, I'm doing things for them, but really getting clear on what it is that I want and what I want my future to look like, and getting that focus, all right, getting that in clear focus so that all of my actions are intentional and moving me in that direction. So I can ask myself daily: is it moving me closer to where I want to be? The answer is no. Then I may need to set some boundaries when it comes to others, or I need to set some boundaries with my time, right? My calendar, make sure that my calendar reflects my priorities. So, do you want to share anything about this message we have up here, right? Interrupting the law of sowing and reaping. I really liked
Yeah.
how he said
Yeah. Well, see, the most successful people have already set boundaries, and that's how they became successful.
that.
Um, and we depend on the sowing and reaping thing. And I want people to understand successful people are successful because they understand the sowing and the reaping. Unsuccessful people don't understand sowing and reaping, and that's why they never reap because they never sown.
Mm.
That's a big one, right? Some people
Yeah.
think like, oh my God, this person and that. These people understand that they first of all they know how to set boundaries. Yep, and it seems like a jerk. I've been called a jerk before, right? None of my true friends, right, real friends, could ever say
Hmm.
I haven't been there for them though. That's just not me. I'm so loyal. I sometimes I go outside of my own freaking boundaries to make sure they're okay, make sure that type of stuff again, right? But I'm intentional about it. When somebody says, "Hey, man, I want to get together for lunch with you," right? My one of my next texts is okay, when,
Hmm.
right? And we narrow down a date, and then that's the date, right? But if you just say in passing, "Hey, we should get together," if we don't come up with a date, I promise you, as soon as we leave, I'm not thinking about that. Real talk. I mean, family
Yeah.
members. I mean, I got friends that date back to 1994. If we don't set a date, and I even tell them, hey, if you go set a date with my wife, if you go to my wife and y'all narrow down a date, done. It's happening.
Hmm.
We ain't got to discuss it. Ain't probably nothing coming up either, because that's just
Yeah.
how we are. And once we set it, that's what it is. You know why we can do that? We have boundaries.
Hmm.
Right? I think you were telling me a situation with somebody. I'm gonna just go ahead and say it, Majid. I'm sorry. Weren't you talking about something of somebody coming over your house unannounced?
Yeah.
I got really close friends, like Cordell Garrett. If Sheik was still living in the area, Sheik Kuyate,
Hmm.
Sean Gibbons, Carlton McLeod, Derek Collier. Right? These are guys who go back. Even they wouldn't come by my house unannounced.
Yeah.
Are you crazy? Matter of fact, I fly a flag outside my house just so you know there's guns on premises. Don't come over here. What the hell is wrong with you? I think that's just disrespectful. Even my mom lived in my area, she wouldn't do that.
Mm.
That's just disrespectful. But here's the deal. I set boundaries a long time ago. It's just certain stuff you don't do.
Yeah.
Another man can't come to my house without me being here. That's just, it's a boundary. It's almost an unspoken boundary. You better not even try it. Because you just don't want to see that side of me.
Yeah.
Right? The very appearance of evil is evil. So certain stuff you just don't do. Right? But those come with boundaries. And the bad thing is, just like in the sowing and reaping, other people will like to place you set themselves into your stuff. Right? And if you're not clear, listen, I gotta say this. Conduct permitted is conduct taught. I'll say it again. Conduct permitted is conduct taught. You don't check them the first time that stuff happens, you now giving them permission to do so.
Yep.
Very important. I think that's super important just to keep boundaries, but it keeps you sane. It just, yeah. And it keeps pressure off us too. You know, once you've set some boundaries, now they know it's okay for them to set some. Just what I believe.
And I think sometimes, you know, being concerned about how other people feel or right really is irrelevant because you're forsaking your own feelings for someone else's, which
Yep. And if that's seen as selfish, matter of fact, I had to learn that I had to set boundaries just so I could be as good as I am with the people when they need me. Yeah. So I had to have a time where nobody could bother me. It's just my wife and daughter in the house, right? And even them, they're in the house with me, but they still know that they're kind of, you know, sometimes dad needs a time to decompress. Sometimes dad needs some time alone with the Lord, right? Leave them alone, let them have it, right? Even in my own house, right? In order for me to be good, right? I've learned it. Matter of fact, funny, I'm getting ready to do a talk on this, right? The power of absence. Look at that. Samuel Chan on leading. Look at this. Leading from a distance. Sometimes I just need to remove myself. Because sometimes if I'm always there, they won't go. My wife and I got strategic even with couples we deal with, right? They're going through some couple stuff, right? And we're there to pray for them, right? My job is to put my arm around the brother and walk with him through whatever the situation is, blah, blah, blah. But it also became a point that we weren't answering the phone every time they call. And sometimes it'd be a day and a half before we call them back. Right? If you got locked up because of something you did stupid and you're going to be a day and a half in there, maybe that's a day and a half for you to think. I don't know, but right? Where people call us to pray for them all the time. John, can you pray? Now, I'm not talking about people who just recently did this. There's some people who recently did this and sent us texts. And we don't mind doing that, right? But it's some people who, they call us so much for prayer, I don't think they're praying for themselves at all. Right? So guess what my wife and I started doing? Matter of fact, I can't even take credit. My wife started it. And then I thought to myself, man, she right. Right? She would let them, she would not answer them because she knew what it was. Right? So she taught them how to pray for themselves. But you also got to believe in the prayer. Sounds simple, but these are boundaries we had to set. Right? We still love those couples, still work with them, still see them. Right? We haven't had anybody over our house in some time. But those are boundaries we had to set. And also we had to set those boundaries because we didn't want the things that we're helping other people with to affect our own marriage. Yeah. No offense to anybody who's listening to this and who've worked with us in this type of stuff, but some of those things are demons. And I gotta watch how many demons I allow in my house. Sorry.
Good. No. I appreciate you sharing. You know, just because I'm a work in progress, right? So setting boundaries is something new, and it's something that I've been like, it's been on my mind. You know, that I have to work on this. I have to get better at this.
Yeah. You know what's cool about you though? you're cool with respecting boundaries. You just don't set them enough for you.
Yeah.
Like you're one of them people. Your family's so close to us, right? Your parents and your brother Bakar. I mean, you guys are so cool, right? And you live so far, right? If you came into town and just swung by our house, we wouldn't bat an eye. But we also know you would never do that.
Yeah.
But if you were like in the area and you swung through, we would actually open the door and everything. Let you in.
I'd let you know I was coming though. I'd let you know I was coming.
And see, that's my thing. You would let people let us know that you were coming, even though you're one of them people in our life where you don't really need to. Just how it is. I mean, but we love that about you. We respect that about you. You've always honored us in that way, honored our marriage, and we respect that about you. Right? We love your children.
They love you guys too.
So
say it again.
She over here listening.
True.
That's the first time I heard him say he loved me.
Love you.
You need it.
Words of affirmation. That's our love language. That's our love language.
Yeah, but we like generally love your family. I mean, it was an awkward way of us meeting and us connecting, and but it's been a blessing in our lives. You know, having spent as much time with your dad, love your grandmother. Just a fired up old man. That lady's she's awesome. Every time I think of her, I'm like, man, she beast.
Yeah.
Right, but right, your brother that just moved to Cali. Is he in Cali now? Right?
Yep.
Love his art, right? Love how ambitious your brother Bakar is, and just how he'll just go it. He'll go for it. He'll just go, right? I like that, right? So, but believe it or not, we still got boundaries for you guys too, right?
Absolutely.
And it's good for us, but it's also good for you. It's good for the families, and boundaries can be a good thing if they're used properly, but also if they're communicated the right way.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. So I certainly appreciate your insight, John, having a conversation with me. Like I said, this was liberating for me, just being able to get what I got from chapter 1. So I can't wait to get through the rest of the book. It's only 2 hours, like on audiobook. You know, most books on audiobook are like 6, 7, 12 hours, right? It's 2 hours, John. But I was at my daughter's gymnastics practice yesterday. I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and listen to the book. But I started listening. I was like, wait a minute, I gotta take notes. I got on my phone and I was like taking notes on my notes section, and but it just, I need to, I want to remember. I don't want to just read to get through the book. I want to read to get from it. And so I'm definitely going to sit with some of these ideas, re-listen to it. This will have to be one. And actually, I said it was recommended to me about a year ago, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. And I'm glad that I was able to do that just in time for this conversation tonight. So it probably would take us, a week to talk about the whole book. Right? We just got into the first chapter with the topics we discussed tonight. And so hopefully for those that have been listening in, you got some insight, some value out of the conversation. And although we're financial professionals, right? What we do involves, it's so much more than just money, right? It's about your mindset and things like boundaries and needs. All of those things are factors that can influence your financial future. So it's important to take time and use books like this, right? Like I could be reading a book on business, but like if I need to understand boundaries better, it's okay to take time aside, right? It's not so focused, right? I know who I want to become. And so understanding what my weaknesses are and some of my shortcomings, boundaries, this book, is helping me to work on those things so that I can become better. And so hopefully it'll help those that are listening, right? That's the title for the book. And, the author, you can get it on Audible Book, right? I'm not an affiliate or anything like that. I don't get anything from promoting the book, but it's just been a good book. So somebody shared it with me. I got value from it. So I hope that you all got value from it as well. as well as from the conversation that we've had tonight. So, any final words, John, before we sign out?
Hey, yeah, I guess I would say that even though we're financial professionals, our callings are so much farther than just being financial professionals. It's funny, at my gym a couple of days ago, young man, I call him young man, but he's older than me. He for some reason, I don't know why he called me life coach, right? And I thought about that. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't respond. Just put my earphones back in, shook my head, and it's like, right. And I really think I'm more of a life strategist.
Mm-mm.
A coach means I know the plays, I know everything. I don't know it all, right? But I can help strategize as things come up. And by reading books like this, Boundaries, and being involved in stuff like this, what I love about you, Majida, and hopefully people will take what I'm getting ready to say to heart. You don't read or listen to books to finish them. You read them to change. And that's why you stopped, start taking notes, started over, because you want to apply it. And that's one of the things that I took in years ago. And that's why sometimes I read books over and over again, because sometimes you'll miss stuff, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you're a little bit more mature. It's a book I'm reading right now. I'm a little bit more mature than I was 10 years ago, 11 years ago when I read this book, right? So I view the world differently, right? I've changed my mind on a lot of things. So now I'm getting a lot of different things out of it. If I could end anything with you guys today, read, grow yourselves, but don't read to finish. Read to change. And when you have conversations with people, listen to understand instead of listening to respond. And I guess I'll leave you guys with that tonight. I want you to know we love you.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. And I don't know what the topic's going to be, but we'll let you know before we hop on next week, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Momentum Chat. Thank you guys for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you soon.